Okay, are we recording? Are we here? Are we good? Hello! I have a very special treat for you. But before we begin, I just want to remind you to hit that like or the subscribe. It helps me out. It actually shows me that you liked it and that you want to see more. And then it also helps other people find us. So thank you in advance. Today, we are going to be talking about someone who is so cool, a saint, actually. We're going to be talking today about the Demon Slayer, who is a 14-year-old girl from Ireland. The thing that inspired me to talk about the Demon Slayer is actually some art that my friend made and that you can get too. So we're gonna have a little unboxing to begin this video. Okay, so I ordered off of Redbubble. My friend Kate does these amazing, amazing designs. They're icons that are minimalist. So there she is. There's Saint Dymphna. I'm so excited. I've been looking for things to like spruce up this blank wall behind me, and this is it. There's actually... People shouldn't allow me to have objects. Okay, I actually ordered 2 saints. So we're getting 2 videos out of this. Number 1 is Saint Dymphna. Number 2 is a mystery, so stick around, subscribe, etc. Ooh, that is some satisfying cardstock. Very excited. So it smells like fresh paint, actually. Cool. So why is this 14-year-old girl the Demon Slayer? Excellent question. I think she might be my patron saint now. She's very, very cool. So the story goes, and I say story because technically while she lived in the 7th century, her story wasn't written down until the 13th century. So while they were working off of some pretty strong oral traditions, it's a story and we're going to dive in. So, born in Ireland, to a minor king, kind of, we're not going to go into like 7th century Irish politics here. Her mother's a Christian, and when she's 14, she vows herself to an order of nuns, and her mom unfortunately dies. And her dad, the king, goes a little bit off the deep end. So while she has vowed herself to God and to chastity, the king is under more and more pressure to marry again. Here's where it goes a little strange, and you're gonna want to buckle up here because, God, I feel gross just talking about this part of the story, but we gotta do it. He looks at Dymphna and is like, you look like my late wife. We should get married. Obviously, Dymphna is not enthused. So she escapes. She goes with Father, God, I can't remember his name, oh no. She leaves with a priest and the court jester, which is just a young adult novel waiting to happen. Like, maybe not the first part, like the reason they're leaving, but excuse me, I want to learn more about their travels. They get on a boat and they go to Belgium. And when they're in Belgium, they don't just lie low. Okay, that is not Dymphna's style. They use the wealth that she brought with her, lots of coinage, and they start serving the community, like building a home for people and healing people, and it's great. Until, as the story goes, one of these coins, because back in those days, coinage was very different and you could sort of trace it more easily, kind of like tracing a banknote, I guess. I don't know how to do that. So her dad finds out. The king discovers some of her coinage in Belgium and gets on his own boat, follows her, and demands that she marry him. She says no. She says, I'm married to Jesus, essentially, right? I'm a 15-year-old and I'm gonna stand up for myself. A 15-year-old woman in 7th century Europe says no. Okay, as you can probably predict, it doesn't work out very well for her. The king takes out his sword and chops off her head and the head of the priest that accompanied her. It is really, really sad. There's a sense of light, though, about this character, Dymphna. And the beautiful thing, and a lot of the reason that she's actually called the Demon Slayer, is that her legacy lives for so long. Inspired by her, the town forms this policy of invitation to people with mental health problems. They welcome people suffering from mental illness into their community, and not just as patients, right? But as members of the community with something to contribute. We didn't know much about mental health until very recently, and we are still learning. Even though it's genuine medicine, there are so many stories from olden times into the 1900s and today where people with mental health issues are treated less than human. But this is a community that springs up that treats people like people and welcomes them and works with, they're called boarders, like they're in a boarding house. Some people would stop by for a few days, and some people would spend their whole life in the community, and they would show up from all over the place. And all of it leads back to this girl who stood up for herself and knew who she was. In old portrayals of her in iconography, she's actually holding the very sword that chops off her head. Which all goes back to the Gospels, where Jesus exorcises demons, and we all know that the way these demons are talked about in the Gospels reminds us a lot of mental illness. And without getting into the difference between a demon and mental illness, because I want to be very careful about stigma here, that I know very well. Hello, I've suffered from depression and anxiety in the past, like many, many, many people. And actually right now I'm taking antidepressants prescribed to me by a doctor because, and this is very important, taking care of our brains is like taking care of our body. It's part of our body, and it's a part of our health. It was very good of this community, right up until the 1930s actually, to welcome people with mental health issues as full people. That's so cool to me. And so she's called the Demon Slayer because these demons, often I've found that depression feels like a demon. Like your mind isn't what it's supposed to be. That slaying those demons is such a huge part of living a full life. And the act of slaying those demons doesn't stop. And also in her life is the recognition that it's not always possible, right? That these demons and mental health issues are just woven into our lives. That wrestling with our demons, we should seek help. And honestly, sometimes it takes a heaping helping of divine intervention. In the Gospels, it takes Jesus to exorcise these demons. Jesus is up there and all around us, right? But not incarnate in the moment in a human body. So he's a little bit harder to access in terms of like medical help. So that's why it's so important that we seek Christ the healer in others and that we seek help from professionals who are trained to be Christ-like in their care for others. So that means seeking help from a therapist, a counselor, a psychiatrist, a doctor. Just so you know, her remains are in Belgium. But apparently there's like some of her remains are in Ohio. So if you're viewing this from Ohio, like check it out, go pray. I guess if you're listening in Belgium too. Anyway, and her feast day is May 15th, which is really close to my birthday. So stars are aligning, I guess. Yeah, so I'm glad that you learned with me. This has been really cool. I actually had not heard of her until I saw Kate's art, and I'll link to Kate's art below so that you can check out all sorts of saints and angels and just biblical stuff. And I hope that you can be inspired by Dymphna like I have been. to think about mental health in terms of community and in terms of being Christ-like to one another and caring for each other as full people.